Life after death. Eyewitness accounts.
Here is the most important experience of my life. First, the events leading up to it. My parents' report on the events that took place during my absence. My experience. And finally how I feel about it. February 24, 82, Sydney, Australia, 6 p.m. I left my optical repair firm to drive home to Raymond Terrace, a city north of Newcastle, New South Wales. My partner Mike was in the passenger seat. I was driving, and a friend and part-time employee, Steve, was in the back. After 3 months of dry rain, I was driving along Industrial Highway and slowed down to stop at a traffic light. That's where my memory ends. As reported by Mike, my former partner. As we approached the traffic light, it turned green. When we entered the intersection, the speed was 43 km per hour. We hit a large industrial pole just after the intersection. Steve, who was lying on a mattress in the back of the van, turned into a rocket. He was thrown forward into the back of René's head, causing him to crash into the steering wheel. Medical information: Steve had a broken L4 spine and is paraplegic. I had fractures of the basal region, frontal lobe, right eye socket, right zygomatic bone, all depressed, 6 holes in the dura mater. The steering wheel broke, and the spokes of the steering wheel and pointer pierced the body in 3 places, through the throat to the palate, and pierced the right upper and lower chest. Mike received a minor bruise from his seatbelt. My mother reported that, in the afternoon, on February 25, 82, they were in the neurosurgery professor's office where the professor announced my death and that they should be grateful as I would be a vegetable if he had survived. During this conversation, a frightened young nurse burst into the office, blurting out, "He's alive." She sat down and started talking. The professor chastised her for interrupting them 3 times before taking her outside and lecturing her about dead bodies, moving and making sounds. The nurse was categorical. She sat down and said, "Don't give me any more medicine." At that moment, my mother took the professor by one elbow, my father by the other, and led him down the corridor to look. They found me in the back hallway, where I was apparently placed so that the nurse could clean up the equipment before I was transferred to the mortuary. I was in a deep coma and breathing. I remained in a coma for another 10 days. My near-death experience. I do not know when my experience occurred in the above events. I don't remember the process of dying or leaving my body. I moved head first through a dark whirlwind of what looked like black boiling clouds, feeling that I was beckoning to the sides. And it frightened me. Ahead was a tiny dot of bright light that grew steadily larger and brighter as I approached. I realized that I must be dead, and I was worried about my mom and dad and my sister, and I got a little upset with myself because I thought, they'll get over this soon. As if it were a fleeting thought as I eagerly rushed forward towards that light. I arrived at the room with illusory walls, standing in front of a man in his 30s. About 6 feet tall, with shoulder-length reddish-brown hair and an incredibly neat short beard and mustache. He was dressed in a simple white robe. He seemed to emit light, and I felt that he was of great age and wisdom. He greeted me with great love, serenity, peace, indescribable, without words. I felt, "I can sit at your feet forever and be content," which seemed strange to me to think, say, feel. I was fascinated by the fabric of his robe, trying to figure out how to weave light. He stood next to me and told me to look to the left, where I played out the less pleasant moments of my life, I relived those moments and felt not only what I had done, but also the pain I had caused. Some things I never would have thought could hurt. I was surprised that some things I may have worried about, like shoplifting chocolates as a child, were missing. While random remarks that caused me pain unknown to me at the time were accounted for. When I became burdened with guilt, I was directed to other experiences that brought joy to others. Although I felt unworthy, the balance seemed to be in my favor. I received great love. I was taken further into the room that became the hall, and there my grandfather approached me. He looked younger than I remembered and didn't have a cleft lip or cleft palate, but he was definitely my grandfather. We hugged. He spoke to me and greeted me. I was moved to forgive him for dying when I was 14 and forcing me to break my promise to be a doctor and find a cure for his heart condition. Until that moment, I didn't realize I was mad at him. Grandpa told me that Grandma was coming soon and he was looking forward to her coming. I asked why she was coming soon, as she had been traveling from her home in Manchester to New Zealand to Miami for the summer for several years. Grandpa told me that she had bowel cancer and would die soon. Grandpa seemed to have no idea of the time when I insisted on how soon. Grandma was diagnosed 3 months later and died in August. I upset my mother by telling her about this when I regained consciousness. After my grandfather and I talked for a while, he led me further into the room, which again became hall. And we approached a group of people whom I began to recognize. The person who first greeted me came up, put his hand on my shoulder and turned me towards him. He said, "You must return. You must complete the task." I wanted to bet. I wanted to stay. I looked back at my grandfather, and I was quickly led to the exit, to the threshold, where everything became black, nothing. Without awareness, I slowly emerged from the coma over several days, recalling half-dream memories of familiar voices and flashing faces. The clearest moments were on several occasions when I woke up from a deep sleep to find a nurse with a syringe. And I have given up any medication, I have no idea why. I underwent 3 operations to restore the face, skull, eye sockets. Left the hospital with pain, double vision, anosmia, and 8th cranial nerve damage that left me nauseous and unbalanced. I was angry with God for 2 years for sending me back into such agony, with a task that needed to be completed without prompting or instruction. Just one clear message that I have no idea how to convey, viz. It's time to live up to your beliefs, whatever they may be, to put your house in order. For the end times have arrived. It took me 5 years before I could rehabilitate myself. I have a paid job, founded the New Zealand Head Injury Society in 1987. And have been held up as an example of how well you can recover from acquired brain damage. I still don't know my task, I'm still in pain. That's it. Except that the memory of the post-mortem experience is more real than what I did yesterday.
See also other interesting videos about life after death on our channel.